Welcome back to the High Ground Podcast. And I am excited because I've been waiting to talk to this individual for a hot minute here. But also, we had some banger stuff to talk about. I can't wait. But yeah, why don't we jump into it? Why don't you start by introducing yourself, where we can find you, and what you're all about?
Hey everybody, I'm Will. You can find me yapping about Star Wars on the internet, at Will of the Force with an occasional underscore depending on the platform. Yeah, if you type in Will of the Force and then you just scroll down to a Caucasian white guy with a mustache with a green profile picture, that's me. So you'll be able to find me that way.
Nice. All right. So the name change was recent, right?
Yeah.
What
Recent
happened?
name change. So I've been making content for like as of like a week or two ago, 2 years, Star Wars wise. And I originally started off I'm a big Lego nerd, Star Wars Lego
Yeah.
specifically. I originally started making Star Wars Lego content, and I like organically switched up from, I was like, oh, I'll talk about Star Wars Lego. I'll use Lego to talk about Star Wars. I'm just going to talk about Star Wars. And after a while, because formerly I'm like Prince, the content creator formerly known as Diamond Figs. It didn't really make any sense to continue explaining why my username was Diamond Figs, because they're like, because it's already weird enough that my last name is legally Diamond, so I have to explain that, and they're like, okay, you're already lying. Now explain the Figs part of the username. Just switched it up, and Will is my first name. What better Star Wars username than Will of the Force, you know?
Nice. Awesome. I never got onto I always watched from afar all the Star Wars Lego stuff. Every now and then I could chop it up with Obi-Wan, with Matt Mellish and the crew. I can't afford it, man.
Dude, behind me I've got like a ton of Star Wars Lego, and it's a problem. Actually, just switching to strictly Star Wars and not putting myself in the Star Wars Lego box, it's been keeping me away from the Target aisles for a good measure.
What's the best thing you got?
Best thing I've got?
And you can decide whether that's the biggest, most expensive, or just your personal favorite.
So my personal favorite is my favorite Lego set of all time. It's the original first Lego Star Wars wave Luke's land speeder from A New Hope, and it comes with the Luke minifigure, and it comes with Obi-Wan, and it's the classic Lego yellow plastic figures. That's the first Lego set I ever had, actually. And I consider myself a Star Wars fan, but so much of it's not a guilty thing, it's more of a funny thing to me now. So much of how I view Star Wars in terms of memory and how I view the movies in my head or any moment in Star Wars, 9 times out of 10 I'm thinking about how it happens in a cutscene from the complete saga or something like that. So as much as we all like to talk about Star Wars, just know when it's me, it's probably like, oh, how is this working? And mathematically, it's what is Anakin mumbling in the complete saga.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a lot of friends who the Lego Star Wars game is how they got into Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
from the beginning, and it's funny because all of them specifically see all of them know as Captain Panaka as Captain Pancakes because
there it is.
we're like that young.
Yeah,
and yeah, I knew him as like the third black guy in the galaxy.
Number 3, as they call him in the Lego community. That's so funny. My gosh. Yeah. No, seriously, so much of, and I think that's just being a Star Wars fan too, of our age, is growing up in, look, the merchandise is such a large part of why people became Star Wars fans. My room is filled with this stuff, but like the collecting and all of that, that's directly correlated to Star Wars. But I think for us, like growing up around the time of the prequels, it was heightened because they were also marketing the original trilogy at the same time. So
Yeah.
while you were growing up, you were learning about 4, 5, and 6 while 1, 2, and 3 were coming out, and you're getting new stories, but you could go to a Toys R Us and get a Luke action figure, but also, wait, the new Attack of the Clones Lego just came out. You know what I mean? So it was I might be biased. It's like when people pick their Saturday Night Live class and they're like, oh, it's whenever you were in high school is your favorite Saturday Night Live class. So I'm a prequels kid, so that's my favorite time as a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, you know what's so underrated is just the merchandising. Like, people throw it around like it's a negative.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's what, and you can say for good or for bad, famously, Gary Kurtz, who is, producer back in the day, left Return of the Jedi because he was convinced that George Lucas only wanted to make more toys for kids.
Yeah.
Didn't want to tell a serious story because, frankly, what I heard from their original ending of Luke putting on the helmet and going, "I'm Vader now,"
Yeah.
is stupid. But
or the ending where it was almost they didn't do the celebration and it was just going to be Luke having a super samurai Kurosawa ending of him walking away from Vader's dead body into the sunset, and then it just cut to black.
that might go hard, especially in like black and white. No,
Return of the Jedi anime, I would watch it every day. Every 24 hours, it would be on clockwork.
Oh my god, that's brilliant.
Yep,
that's what we need. We just need more Star Wars anime, just in general.
Correct.
No, but what I'll just say is, because the toys were a massive part of my life as well, and I know some people who work at like ILM and other places, and for every single person, whether or not they are actually a Star Wars like fan, like I mean, they're all fans at ILM, but in other places, they were all so inspired by playing with these toys. It just instantly became, I think it's the first thing that cemented Star Wars into the zeitgeist for everyone growing up.
Oh, 100%.
And it became, like, you can't be a writer without like having first played around with your action figures on how you would tell this story or whatever.
100%. Yeah. I mean, everybody views how a lightsaber should work outside of the wonderful people who actually know how a lightsaber should work, but views it as what a kaleidoscope lightsaber that you just go like this and it pops out feels like in your hand. Like when everybody thinks they know how a lightsaber works, but really it's just based on whatever toy you were messing around with when you were a kid. So that's the only...
Man, when I was little, they didn't even have those. All we had is at the fair every year. They had, it was just a regular flashlight
with like the weird generic ones. Yep,
yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Use 2 like D batteries, and then it runs out like after half an hour.
It wouldn't work a week later. It was those lightsabers and the giant, like 3 feet tall blow up Spider-Mans were right next to each other. That was it.
Yeah, but man, we just had episode 5 of the Acolyte drop, and first of all, overall, how you feeling about the show? Just in general, are you in? Are you out? What are your likes and dislikes?
Okay, not to jump into the way Star Wars discourse has been since the Acolyte dropped, I have loved watching every week. Seriously, and it's one of the... I've been trying to decide in my head why I've been enjoying this so much. And there's a million reasons as a Star Wars fan why I've been enjoying Acolyte as much as I have. But I think I've just been genuinely enjoying it because it's all new characters. It's a completely new timeline to me as somebody who's not as well versed in the High Republic, which is something that I've been meaning to dip my toes into a little bit more. But that I'm not sitting, like for Ahsoka, when I was watching Ahsoka, and that was such a wonderful time as a Star Wars fan to sit there, and I was incredibly excited for that show. But I think the difference here is, and a little bit Andor too, but I think the difference here is because it's so separated. This is the first time in a long time where I can sit down and watch Star Wars. As much as it's referencing other Star Wars, I mean, George Lucas, it's poetry, it rhymes. As much as it is referencing other Star Wars, this is the first time where I've sat down and watched Star Wars every week. I did not know what was going to happen. I wasn't trying to call out a cameo. I wasn't, oh, well, this happened in a different animated series from the early 2000s, so I'm going to be able to pick what happens in episode 7, and this is lining up. It's the MCUification of Star Wars, of trying to guess what's going to happen next. I haven't been able to do that for this show, and I've been extremely excited and entertained by that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I'm a massive High Republic fan, but even this is separated timeline wise
Yeah.
from there. It's a tail end of it. So yeah, each week it's another mystery. But and I was talking about this earlier. Like, I'm not a fan of mystery boxes for the sake of mystery boxes, like the JJ effect.
Yeah.
But this one it's like a mystery box, and so like you have a mystery, you open it up, you get the answer, but there's another mystery box inside
Yeah.
there, and you're like, so you are getting, it is justifying the previous box, but you're like, well, now I want to open this one,
Yeah.
and so that's got me going. Especially, I mean, I do have issues with some of the dialogue choices,
Yeah.
some of the acting choices in certain scenes, but it really hasn't detracted from my overall enjoyment at all. And what's more than that, I'm curious about your opinion on this. How good is Star Wars supposed to be?
I don't like that
I
you're
say that.
laughing because I feel like I'm going to be set up with this question. If you're going to
Well,
start laughing halfway through the question, I'm like, oh, what is this going to be?
I feel like I'm going to be flamed for asking the question, because I love the prequels, absolutely, but like there's a lot of cheesiness in all of Star Wars. There's a lot of camp
Yeah.
in all of Star Wars. There's a lot of weird line choices. Luke in the New Hope speaks in a very bizarre way. like
I want to go to
like the
Dodger
words.
Station to pick up some power converters. It's like, are you a Muppet, dude? But you love it. That's part of the charm of Star Wars, in my opinion. My favorite Star Wars movie is Return of the Jedi. And if I have to mentally prepare myself and decide that I'm not going to skip over the Ewok parts when I watch Return of the Jedi. Not saying it's bad, but sometimes I'm just I'm cringing a little bit when it's like they think I'm one of their gods. It's like, all right, C-3PO, but like I want to get to the cool stuff at the end. You know what I mean? It's part of the charm of Star Wars.
The only reason that they won is because Chewbacca got hungry and found a random leg.
It's the Indiana Jones effect in Raiders. It's like he had no effect for Raiders for the entirety of the movie. If he wasn't there, it's still the same thing. Chewbacca just got hungry, saved the galaxy.
No. So the way I've always felt about it is like, I don't feel right complaining about something that is like a load bearing wall in Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I can't get mad about this here if I love it over here. You know what I mean? I unapologetically enjoy Attack of the Clones, and
Say that a little bit louder for the
movie.
people in the back. For us Attack of the Clones fans. Let's go.
No, it's a weird murder mystery slash Victorian romance, like Romeo and Juliet. Like the dialogue, Obi-Wan would be very grumpy if he saw this. It's like it's meanwhile Obi-Wan has no idea what's going on at any point in his entire investigation, and it's just the best. He just shows up at a planet, and they're like, oh, we have the stuff ready for you, and he's like, good, the stuff, thank you, can you
Master
show
Yoda,
me?
we're having trouble finding this planet. Maybe you should look harder, is literally his answer to Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan goes, okay, and then he finds it. It's the best, dude. I love it.
First, he asked a room of children to ridicule him.
Yeah.
but
hey guys, I'm a grown
it's
adult.
great.
Can you weigh in on this opinion I have real quick that might start or stop the fate of the galaxy? I love it.
I love it. And so that's why I watch this, and I'll see Yor just has a shirt off for no reason, and you're like, that's so weird. And you're like, okay, no, but it's making sense because this is telling me something about his character.
Yeah.
But there's just stuff like that happens in it.
Yeah.
I'm cool. I'm enjoying it.
It's part of the charm. I mean, it's like one of my favorite moments so far from the Acolyte is when it's at the beginning of episode 4 when they get to Brendok and Jackie is trying to converse with that large, like the alien who's in charge of parking, the parking attendant alien that's standing outside.
Watched so many interviews and so like I'll see things and in my mind I'm like I feel like this is a George moment. I feel like George would love this, and it's always the
Yeah,
weird stuff. You know what I mean? Book of
the
Boba Fett. I'm
weirder the
convinced he
Force
would
gets,
love.
dude.
I'm convinced he would love the bikers in in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Um,
They would have flames on the bikes. It would be American Graffiti style. That's why I'm saying, like, for stuff like that, and look, I do enjoy every once in a while talking about cringy Star Wars when your boy with the half cyborg guy with the trench coat does the spin and the shoot like a Power Ranger. That's fun to me. But it doesn't like, do I think the Book of Boba Fett is a
he
ruined
just hit
show
circle
because
in
I
extra
saw it?
time.
Yeah, like he just had his go-go Power Rangers moment and slow motion spun around and shot his, but like it's not the worst thing. It's just fun, dude.
Yeah, in this show, for some reason, Basil. I just picture George loving Basil. Like
Yeah,
this weird little creature just screaming. What does he
that's
do?
such a
Like,
George Lucas coded character of, okay, we have this really serious thing going on. What if we get a mole man to sniff really loud and run around outside? Got it, George.
and then at the end of episode 5, when all the dust is settling, he's just like,
Yeah, mourning Pip and Kamir falling from fighting off of those bugs, and then just you hear the sniffing off screen. And you're like, "Are you kidding this guy again? This is when he's gonna pop back up." But it's awesome.
but yeah, I mean, overall, episode 5 hit. Most of it was a big old fight.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I mean, it's been going around Twitter a lot. Like Star Wars, a series of Star Wars TV, the 5th episode, you're like 9 out of 10. It's going to be a hit. My favorite episode of Star Wars, of the Disney Plus era of Star Wars TV, is Chapter 13 of Season 2 of Mando with Ahsoka, when Ahsoka shows up in live action. That's not only one of my favorite things in Star Wars, but that, and then you look at the track record of like Mando in Book of Boba Fett coming back, which controversial of if you thought that Mando should have had his own episode in the Book of Boba Fett. I liked it. And then you've got Anakin showing back up in the World Between Worlds and Ahsoka, and now this. It's like those 5th episodes are fantastic. And with this, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, mainly because of the choreography. Like, they were moving in such a way where it's, at least for me, and I'm sure people are going to come for me talking about choreography because that's always a hot button issue when it comes to Star Wars. Yeah.
Then you're doing something wrong.
They would never take their left foot and step back like that. What lightsaber form is that? And you're like, come on. And today, did you see the behind the scenes footage that Manny Jacinto posted?
I watched some of it, and yeah.
He's zooming, dude. It's very cool.
And in fact, my only complaint is that the behind the scenes footage had a stable camera.
That's true.
It looks it's like it looks so epic like this. I wish some of the cuts, a lot of them were good, but there's just too many.
Yeah, I understood, and I thought it was cool, the aesthetic choice to have the lightsabers be like the only source of light around, and the more that the Kamir or the stranger wins and takes out those Jedi, the light literally dies from the scene.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool, but also, like, I kind of would have liked it to be just a little bit brighter. I'm an old man. I just would like it to be a little bit brighter. But I
literally
really enjoyed
just
it.
made a video complaining about TV being too dark. Like,
yeah.
Right before. That's what I was doing right before.
That's so funny.
This up. But he also, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. This is my favorite lightsaber fight in Star Wars right now, and I know people are gonna say recency bias, but
yeah, dude,
hear me out. Hear me out. The way he fought was unlike any other choreography I've really ever seen in anything, and it really tracks well with what I feel like an actual Sith would the way he would fight, right? And then when Yord was like, his moves don't even make any sense, and you're like, yeah, he's headbutting lightsabers and
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean? Like, how do you fight him? There's times where like he's left open, but like, no, he's just done fighting you, and he's over there,
Yeah.
and he doesn't care that this isn't finished, and you're like, he has to be coming back for me, right? But they made him feel so otherworldly and inhuman during the entire fight. Even the way his head moves at the beginning, like it just, it feels different. And when when he calls out to May, and the camera zooms in on his face super close, and it was just really creepy. Yeah, he just did a lot of interesting stuff that I don't know. We got a 3-hole punch Jackie.
Yeah. She's got a couple of torso tunnels, just like Qui-Gon.
Yeah. Lightsabers aren't lethal though, right? She'll get better.
And they don't cut hair either. You can't use them to cut anything else other than other people. Nobody's ever seen a Padawan brain get cut, I guess. That's whatever's next,
I mean, I saw Han open up a tauntaun. Like, all bets were off from the very beginning.
I'd be cutting sandwiches with it. Are you kidding me? It's crazy. What are you going to do?
I saw, someone came into my comments and complained like, oh, so a tiny knife is more lethal than a lightsaber? And I was like, yeah, kind of, yeah. A lightsaber is not wielded because it's extra lethal. Also it cauterizes wounds. It's not going to give you infections. You're not going to bleed out.
Anything
I think it is
through the heart is lethal.
That's the other side of it. Yeah. What the actual injury is part of the concern. But I digress. Any other like notable scenes or anything from the episode?
When we were talking about the duel itself, what I thought was really cool on my second watch of it was there's really only one point in the actual dueling section of that episode where I felt like Kamir wasn't in control. The entire episode, I was like, no matter what they do, he is 3 steps ahead of them, and he will show up behind them or waiting for him to lurk around. Even if you're running away, he already knows where you are, and the only reason why you don't have a lightsaber at you is because he's letting you, and he's worried about something else. The only time where I felt like he wasn't in full control is when Soul starts to go hand to hand with him, and I rewinded that and watched it so many times. A lot of people were talking about the Indara, the Force Fu or Soul with May earlier in the season. That is probably my favorite dueling so far in this entire season, and it doesn't even have lightsabers in it.
I mean, Soul's got hands for sure.
Yeah.
No, that scene was amazing, and I also really enjoyed the difference because everyone fought differently. Everyone fought as their characters, because we also had a hand-to-hand fight with Jackie and May.
Correct.
And that was just like a bar brawl. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were on the World Star video.
It was awesome. Yeah, I mean, the episode overall, I feel a little bit saddened, right? Because we find out that the 2 episodes, 4 and 5, were at one point 1 episode.
Yeah.
And they were asked to split them, right? So for me, episode 4 was the weakest of everything in the series, but it made sense to me because it was like, there's not more in this episode. Like, there should have been more to this, and they're like, well, there is a lot more to it, and that's why it was slow in the beginning, because it was really, really hyped for the rest of it.
I wonder how early on they were asked to split it up, because in press, Leslie Headland said, and maybe not even just Leslie, said that was their favorite episode. A lot, I feel like, which that early on to get to like press and the marketing of it all, for Leslie to say that that's their favorite episode, they would have had to know, you know what I mean? That episode 5 was split from episode 4, and that, or maybe at the time, but maybe it was just the moments in there. I don't know. I just, at what point, I want to know how Or maybe it was in the scripts they split it in half. I do have a question for you. I was thinking about this on my drive earlier today. Do you think this show would be more palatable for people if it was released as a full drop, like binge season, like a Netflix show?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a mystery show like this is better week to week. It is better week to week. But
yeah,
I was even talking about this in with some other friends in regards to Fallout that just came out, because we watched all of it in 2 days, as a big group, and we loved it. We had a blast and all the stuff, and then it was only after we finished and enjoyed the hell out of it that we started seeing all the complaints that Fallout has gone woke and then, all that stuff, and the discourse that was really, frankly, super dumb. It's a lot easier to ignore when it's not being interposed every single episode, And so for that reason, I kind of wish it all dropped.
Yeah.
But we would be missing out on a lot of smaller details had it been dropped like that. It wouldn't be until later rewatches. But you know what? As a content creator, I wouldn't mind unpacking that over the next couple months.
There's pros and cons to both sides of it. I think for me, at least in my comment sections, it's been when episode 1 and 2 came out, and then especially when 3 came out, people were like, well, why wasn't episode 3 the first episode? And then they're like, well, I have more questions than I have answers about this show. That's making me upset. And I'm like, it's a mystery.
That's a feature.
First off,
it's not a bug. That's a feature.
Yeah, that's literally what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. The whole show is about making you uncomfortable. But I think if it was dropped as a full season, I think the people who maybe don't like it as much now, because the episodes are short, and that is a criticism that I have about it. If they just fleshed out conversations a little bit more, we saw a little bit more. This show, we have not seen a lot of outside of episode 1, like what's going on in space. Like, this is the first show we've seen in a long time where there's not a lot of space travel going on. You know what I mean?
That's true.
It's very grounded in terms of like planets and being in one location or in like a planet environment, which I think is interesting because in a lot of the trailers, there's way more space travel that we see. So I don't know. It's a pacing thing. It's based on preference. It's just what I've been saying to people who haven't been enjoying the week to week and saying it's too short. I said after episode 3, I was like, stop watching and just wait for the whole thing to come out. And I guarantee you'll like it more and you'll enjoy it more if you get to watch everything back to back. Imagine if like a Knives Out came out and they did an intermission halfway through that movie and they were like, okay, in 6 months, you're going to get to see the back half of that movie. Everybody would be like, this is the worst thing of all time. But it's
true.
People are impatient, audience-wise. You just have to know what you're getting into in terms of Star Wars,
Yeah, I agree. It's an entirely different animal. I think anything that is aimed primarily at geek culture is, kind of subject to the same.
Yeah,
it has a whole different fan base. I guess it's in. There's a lot of word about Manny Jacinto's arms.
Khmer Army, dude. Yeah, I've never wanted to do push-ups more than after that Star Wars episode. Oh my gosh.
I was watching like, man, I listen, I'm very straight, but I get it.
That's what I'm saying. She was like, dude, and I was like, I know. I feel you right now.
I'm sorry, honey, close your eyes.
She was doing that to me. There's that gif going around on Twitter of him just like holding the lightsaber and flexing, and I'm like, all right, how long? We're gonna see that for months now.
So his character, what do you think? Is he officially a Sith? Did that little article thing that mentions he mentions a Sith Lord?
Yeah.
But at the same time, from his dialogue choices, it didn't sound like it. We also had Kylo Ren little music drop in the background as well. Where are you at with this, Sith or non-Sith?
There's so many different like sides to this. If he is a Sith, who's above him, and then there's that question of, which I was reminded of. I think everybody was reminded at the same time after this episode that what's the actor's name who's still he's been Acolyte,
Yes.
and everybody's like, this is the guy who's in charge of Khmer, or at least is going to check Khmer later on as the real Sith Lord. I think this, when it comes to Khmer, like I was saying at the beginning of when we were talking, that when I watch from week to week, this is the first time where I've like enjoyed so much that it's so separate from everything else. Khmer is the only thing where, as a Star Wars fan, as a sweaty Star Wars nerd, where you're trying to get to the bottom of, okay, if he's a Sith, what does this mean for the lineage moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
If he's not a Sith, how does that affect the Sith that we do know are active at least a little bit after this time period? Look, if he is a Sith, I think that's extremely interesting that there's another Sith that's roaming around at this time. It just, there's the whole Kiadi Mundi of it all. It just goes to show how little the Jedi knew and how much their pride was in their downfall of how much they thought they knew about the galaxy. You really don't. You don't have cameras everywhere. You got to fix those ring cameras, Jedi, because apparently there's people walking around that you don't know about that are probably people like the whole Khmer being like, the Jedi would refer to me as a Sith. I really love that line because it's what we're all doing as fans right now, where it's like the green saber good, the red saber bad guy. If he's got a lightsaber and it's this color, he's a Jedi. If he's got this lightsaber, it's red, he's a bad guy. He's got to be a Sith. But like the list of red blade dark side villains are, they're all throughout the saga. So
there's a lot of them.
There's a lot. Dagan Gera, Ventress, Aaron Malicos. Like there's so many, especially like over recent, like the last like 5 or 6 years where they've been really popping up. And I love that, even to the point where like we saw Dagan Gera, which suspended disbelief. It always takes me out of it in terms of Survivor when Dagan Gera wakes up and he's been stewing. He is mad that entire time. He's been asleep this whole time. The first thing he does when he wakes up is he's like, hey, nice to meet you, Cal Kestis. I just have to bleed this kyber crystal real quick. It's just a little quick to me. I love it. And I also love that he's not a Sith, but that's the first thing that he does to make that lightsaber red. You know what I mean? Even to the point where, like in Ahsoka, we see Balin and Shin, and yeah, they're red lightsabers, but they're a different hue because of what Filoni wanted to do with the characters. Is he a Sith? If he is, I'm cool with it. If he's not, I think it's a little bit more interesting to me. If he is a Sith, I would love to see that explored in season 2. However, the one thing, regardless of if he's a Sith or not, is I really hope he stays alive at the end of the season and he doesn't just get killed off like everybody else. Because then I'm like, all right, if they make a season 2, it's going to be a whole new group of characters. You know what I mean? Like, if anybody survives, I would assume it would be either May or Osha or both of them. But I would love for all the Jedi to be axed off. Look, Soul's not making it to the end of this show. Sorry.
No.
He's not. But if Khmer stays alive, that's interesting to me for a season 2.
You know, I can see a world where, you know, where before Khmer like takes off, maybe he plops his helmet on the Yord or
up as the Sith. But then they all get there. They're like, okay, this is obviously fake because we all know that Yord didn't have it in him to do this. Sorry, Yord Horde.
Or someone else. You know. But I just mean, you know, that's because that was one of the things that happened in the Darth Bane books, where you know they were able to frame Xana's brother, you know, as the Sith Lord. So the Jedi were like, well, he's taken care of. They made him go crazy. They cut him down, and then it was fine. I think there's a lot of possibility. I'm on team no Sith, you know, that he's not a Sith, just because of how he said it. Actually, I'm on team he's a former Sith, specifically. He was the apprentice to a Sith, realized, man, these guys are just as rule followy even worse because the Jedi don't actually punish you.
Yeah.
People act like the Jedi are strict. They're not strict at all. They say, don't do that. And then you do it, and they're like, and then you keep going. They're just going
Meditate,
to
broom
irritate you.
duty. And then they're like, all right, we'll figure it out. We'll do our chores, Yoda.
But like, if we have a situation where this is a former Sith, he kind of like Venomous was, where he was not actually the apprentice, but was like something that was on the back burner. And he was like, I don't want to follow these rules. I just want to, do hood rat stuff with my friends. And he just left to just travel the galaxy and do his own thing, And I could definitely see a world where he also seems to know a lot about that coven of witches. So was he part of that? Was he bankrolling them? was he one of their earlier creations?
He's the Damask Holding of this time, where he's like the Bruce Wayne just funding it.
I've been thinking he's kind of like Orochimaru from Naruto, where he like has weird science experiments just all over the place. He doesn't actually care about the outcomes, but he just watches these people like tear each other up for power.
Yeah.
But now he's a lot like Toby and Obito from Naruto, if you're a fan of the show. Anyways, no, you could very easily have him be someone who has left, because what he says doesn't sound like a Sith. When he says, I have no name, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? The Sith are very proud of their names, typically.
Yeah. I think when the Sith that we are most familiar with are obviously Palpatine and Maul before his torso extraction, and then Dooku, but like they're all very proud. Like they're so
proud of being a Sith. They're proud of their mission and what
and
they're
their
doing.
Power.
They're of their power, of the obtaining more power. Of my
but
goal
when it comes
is
to
just
Plagueis,
to destroy the Jedi.
He's more like in that entire book. The whole reason why he's like, Palpatine, you have to do it, because I'm going to be the guy in the back. I don't want to be the face. Mainly because he has a giant mun head, so he probably realized that people would be like, that guy's a weirdo. But you have to be the face. Yeah. I just want to play with my beakers, man. But the whole time, he's one of the best examples of, and I know it's Legends now, but he's one of the best examples of a Sith that doesn't want to be on the forefront the entire time. And I think that's very cool when Kabir says the line of like, when Soul asks, he's like, why would you risk discovery? And Kabir's like, well, I have to kill you all now. Risk discovery, there's going to be no discovery because none of you are going to be alive to remember this or tell anyone. Which that was where I was like, oh, he might be a Sith. You know what I mean? Just because that's a very hiding Sith thing to do. I don't know if there's another sect right now or throughout Star Wars that I can really remember where there's so much secrecy surrounding their being and their existence. I can't really think of another group like that.
Yeah. Although, straight up, I would love it if this ends up being a Knights of Ren origin story of like the
cool.
original. If it was like the founding member was a former Sith who didn't want to do that anymore, and that's why Ren's like, we're no friends with the Sith. I think that would be really cool as well.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm in. But give it all to me. I partially, because this does have to be cleaned up by the end of it, so 100%. I'm partially assuming that before this is over, he's going to get a lightsaber through the chest, and we're going to find out the actual Sith Lord is there. And they can just leave his body. And so people will be like, I don't know how he died, but this is over?
The thing, too, when it comes to Plagueis is like, there's that one portion, and I forget who I was talking to about this. Maybe it was my buddy Grayson from Mortis FM. We were talking about it, and at the beginning of Plagueis, he's talking about that rift that was originally ripped, where the unnamed Sith Lord, where he's talking about his lineage,
Return to the Light,
yes,
something like
exactly. That. And he did something where he used the Force in such a way that it was one of the first time where the Jedi were alerted of a Force user of that power that wasn't necessarily on their side, or could it have been a Sith? And in Plagueis, that character is not named, which the part in the Ki-Adi-Mundi episode, which I don't remember what number episode it was, but the Ki-Adi-Mundi episode, Vernestra says she feels a shift, which is eerily similar to how it's described there in Plagueis.
She specifically drops 2 Plagueis lines, back to back in that moment. She says that there was a shift in the Force, and that it was tipping the scales.
There it is.
Was like they use both of those. There's been so many deep lore drops in this. That's also been delightful because it hasn't been cameos. It's been natural to see in there. We get the references to Tricata. We get some really deep cut stuff. I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Leslie Headland is like, this show has cemented it for me where like Leslie Headland is a Star Wars fan. Maybe she didn't come up with all these ideas by herself, but she at least sought them out, which is really cool for looking for somebody who's creating Star Wars.
And she's specifically a massive Sith fan, a massive KOTOR fan.
Absolutely.
And a big fan of Darth Treya. So, and I think that has been coming across. So outside of Star Wars and I guess outside of Legos, what else are you into?
I'm a big all around nerd. Comics is really where I sit. So if it's not Luke Skywalker, it's probably Batman for me. Okay, that's where I'm a huge DC fan. I'm also a big Marvel fan, and then just honestly, like most nerd fandoms I sit in, I'm not well tapped into anime as much as my younger brother loves it. And he's been trying to get me to start watching it, but every time I'm like, oh, but there's something in Star Wars I don't know yet. So it's hard for me to pick up something else. But yeah, usually with any fan, I'm a huge film nerd too. So yeah, I'm kind of anything you can think of where it's like, oh, that's probably a nerdy thing. Anything you see at a Comic-Con, 9 out of 10 times, I'm the one bothering my wife about it late at night when she's like, nice. You watch something else? I'm like, no, but this just came out.
Okay, I mean, so we got Cape Crusader about to drop pretty soon, so
very cool.
I'm excited about that. But you got to talk with good friends of the channel and with the films. They have their own little podcast, and what they do is they bring people on and those people will introduce a movie to them that they haven't seen before.
Whoa!
So if you have some deep cut movies or anything like that, and then you let them know, they'll watch it and then have a whole episode where you're discussing it. I'm gonna go on there with them. This coming September is when they're starting back up, and I'm bringing Primer. They haven't seen that film yet.
Don't say it, because then what if they find out and then they go watch it? They'll get the jump on you, dude.
No, so they already know. I already told them. We already booked the movie, like, so that people don't double book it.
It's not like a competition where they're waiting for their guest to drop it and be like, "Oh, actually, we saw it. Sorry."
No, I already made sure that they hadn't seen it. It's my favorite time travel movie. It's super low budget.
Yeah.
One guy did the writing, the directing, the editing, and made all the music. Such a cool film.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Great to know. Anything you want everyone else to know about you or anything like that?
No. If you like Star Wars, you can come find me. Just be nice to people. That's all it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've always appreciated about you is because I know you and I will have different favorites. We like different things, but that's why I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need to hear my own opinions echoed back at me. So I don't know. I think the variety makes for the spice of life.
Yeah. Also, like if you have something that's your favorite and somebody else has something that's their favorite, who's to say that thing can't end up becoming one of your favorite? If somebody is so passionate about something that is their favorite thing, at least give them the time of day, because from where I'm sitting as such a nerd, like if somebody's passionate about it, it might end up being something that I really enjoy as well.
I mean, low key, I hated Rogue One when I first saw it. Rogue One was my lowest rated Star Wars film.
That's fine. Clip that and let's watch the comments on that roll in. Yeah. That's such a good bit, dude. I love that. It's so
Fantastic. And this is early days of the
yeah.
pandemic, but it had and they explained why they loved it and what they loved about it. And I watched it again, and it was a different movie. I literally watched a different movie, and
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's cool. Yeah,
Yep.
so that's why I love doing this.
And that works the other way too, which I think is something that I had to learn as a fan is going into something where that you haven't seen yet and only listening to people not necessarily give criticism, but talk about their worries and what could potentially go wrong with it, you're going to have a completely different viewing experience. I mean, not to pontificate, but my favorite quote is your focus determines your reality. And before you go into something, if you're always talking about how terrible it's going to be, of course you're not going to like it because you have set yourself on a bad expectation for viewing the product. Afterwards, if you don't like it, I'll hear you out. But beforehand, it's such a better viewing experience. Look, I've even stopped watching trailers recently for stuff where I'm like, I just want to watch the thing and then I'll talk about it because it's like the same thing with the Acolyte. I've had such a better viewing experience having no frame of reference for it other than
Yeah.
just that I love Star Wars. You know what I mean? It's more fun.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who complains about the Acolyte to me all the time. Hasn't seen it, but spends at least 20 hours a week listening to people talk about it. And we're like, I have concerns. And I'm like,
To each
bro.
their own, but like watch it. Your opinion than it would to watch somebody on a live stream for 4 hours talking about how much they don't like it. Like, I don't know. I'm sure they're great though.
No, they are great. No, but man, I was actually gonna say something. I totally forgot what it was. Damn it! I'm normally better at this.
Hey, that's why it's pre-recorded. You could just cut that out.
Nope, just throw it up. I don't want to edit, so leave me
There you
alone.
go.
All right. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely have to talk more and collaborate on something at some point in time. Recently, just did a Star Wars spelling bee, and I think the Dyad and the Force, we're going to have our own battle of the dyads. So if there's another person or content creator that you consider your dyad, it'll be paired up, and we'll have you go head to head with
Is it
another
trivia?
dyad. Yeah, it'll be trivia. It'll be fun games that we
I gotta
do
pick
online.
somebody smart. Okay, I gotta pick somebody smart. I'll have my own trials and tryouts to see it. I'll pick whoever does the best, like a pop quiz I send out. Thank you so much for having me on this,
do a whole
dude. Like,
fight. Yeah.
thank you so much for having me on. We've like been mutuals for a while and like talked back and forth for stuff. And you popped into a Tales of the Archives live stream the other day, which was super cool to see you in those. But I appreciate you, and I appreciate, like you just said, of having somebody who, if you don't have the same favorites, you still have somebody to talk about. That's something that I really appreciate about you, and I thank you, dude.
Oh,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. And one last time, if you can tell people where they can find you and your awesome content.
Will of the Force with a underscore on YouTube and Instagram, no underscore on TikTok, and then it's after Will on Twitter because it's a common name. Just look for a white guy with a mustache. It's me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me. And for everyone watching, may the Force be with you.
Always.